Good afternoon and evening to CSW66 virtual parallel guests and program participants. I am Mrs. Shawn M. Ross, Connectional UN NGO representative, and here with me is Mrs. Alicia Marriott, also Connectional UN NGO representative. We are here today representing the Women's Missionary Society in consultation with the United Nations Economic and Social Council. And we thank you for attending this virtual parallel event for the 66th session of the Commission on the Status of Women on this day and in this hour. The CSW conference theme is Achieving Gender Equality and the Empowerment of All Women and Girls. Our virtual parallel event will focus on two widespread and gregarious violations and disempowerment of human rights in the form of one, systemic gender inequalities affecting women and children, known as gender-based violence, and two, human trafficking, specifically in South Africa. Violence against women and children are a violation of human rights and a significant global public health concern. Today is our opportunity to share the work of the NGO Women's Missionary Society of the African Methodist Episcopal Church with activists, various organizations, NGOs, and those of you who are curious about the Women's Missionary Society. This is also an opportunity for others to partner with us to advocate for change and advancement for all women around the globe. For the next minute, allow us to set the atmosphere with the images and topic for today's discussion: gender-based violence and human trafficking, with a special focus on child trafficking in South Africa through a 1-minute video montage.
Not be quite as cold here as it was
Hello again. After viewing this montage, it's troublesome and difficult to understand the cause, why, or explain the complex reasons for human trafficking and gender-based violence and its effects on women and girls. Our three speakers will present to you a wealth of knowledge and experience. So let us center ourselves and think about the ways the information shared challenges our assumptions about why this violence and abuse occurs all over the world. I ask myself and each of you these questions. What do I know about the various forms of violations and abuses, and why are they so prevalent now? What are the long-term ramifications and/or generational trauma of human trafficking, of such abuse? As we receive the message from our speakers, we must all realize that each of us are affected and obligated to speak up and serve, to have faith and know that we can make a difference. But before we begin, I would like to share the history of the Women's Missionary Society of the African Methodist Episcopal Church. The African Methodist Episcopal Church was organized in 1816, and in 1944, the WMS became an international organization serving women and children all over the world. In 1985, this International Women's Missionary Society organized and received our consultative status as an international faith-based non-governmental organization in partnership with the United Nations Economic and Social Council. Today, the African Methodist Episcopal Church and the WMS has membership in 39 countries on 5 continents. Through our collective work and through the NGO partnerships and humanitarian organizations, we ensure that the work we do for humanity in the name of the Creator is replicated by other organizations and supported. We strive to impact communities across the globe. And our work goes beyond rescue and restoration to include liberation and equality. I would like to acknowledge our international president of the Connection of Women's Missionary Society, Dr. Deborah Taylor King. We thank Dr. King for her leadership, passion, and commitment to eradicating hunger, empowering women, and educating children all over the globe. To all my missionary sisters and everyone in attendance, Alicia and I welcome you and thank you for availing yourself for this important issue. Today, we will showcase 3 dynamic and passionate speakers who will share their knowledge and acquired facts regarding human rights violations and gender-based violence. Our first speaker is Advocate Tibile M. Ngubini. Her career spans over a decade, specializing in institutional and administrative law, as well as civil litigation. She holds a law degree as well as a master's in business administration. She is a member of the South African Women Lawyers Association, as well as the National Democratic Lawyers Association. Advocate Ngubini is a passionate human rights activist and transformational speaker. She is a human rights activist and also having presented at various conferences throughout South Africa and the United States, empowering individuals to self-actualize, restore the family fabric, advocate for gender equality, and eradication of gender-based violence. During the 2021 General Conference of the African Methodist Episcopal Church, Advocate Ngubini was elected to the General Judicial Council. Her message to us today is pre-recorded from an earlier conference. However, it is perfectly timed and suited for today's audience and topic. She has given us permission to share and is present in the gallery. Please listen to our first presenter, Advocate Tibile M. Ngubini.
Allow me to take a moment to express my gratitude to the WMS Executive Board for inviting me to be part of such an important conference, particularly one that deals with gender-based violence and the impact thereof on our communities and the economy globally. Gender-based violence has been described as a pandemic by the World Bank, United Nations, and certainly the South African government. This type of violence manifests itself in the act of any person against a woman or a child that results in or has the propensity to result in sexual harm, abuse, or psychological harm or suffering, as well as economic harm. This type of violence knows no boundaries. It does not know economic class, and it does not know a developed and a developing country. It affects us all. And the impact thereof has been calculated by the World Bank to be about 3.7% of some countries' GDP. This is astronomical, particularly because this is more than what some countries spend on education. It is undeniable that this indeed is a pandemic. There are generally 5 categories of gender-based violence, namely gender-based violence by a partner, gender-based violence by a non-partner, harmful traditional practices, human trafficking, and child abuse. This conference focuses on human trafficking. However, because the AME Church has a global footprint in more than 32 countries, I deem it opposite that I deal with some of the gender-based violence that are prevalent in other parts of the globe. I commence with gender-based violence perpetrated by a partner. Gender-based violence intimated by partners in South Africa has escalated to astronomical levels. Recently, we have seen how a young woman was chopped up, cut into pieces, placed in a traveling bag, and her body delivered to a police station. The audacity. One lady has recently been burned to death by a partner. These are but 2 examples of staggering statistics of young women being killed by their partners throughout South Africa. And this is the same throughout the world. Gender-based violence is indeed a pandemic. We have also experienced gender-based violence perpetrated by non-partners. This takes us to the workplace and to the schools and even the communities where we live. Bullying has transcended school boundaries and now has turned into corporate bullying, where women are bullied at work, either for failing to perform sexual acts in order to advance their careers, or for just being women. Our children kill each other daily in schools. And our children rape each other, sometimes in full view of other children in schools. This is the level of the gender-based violence in our communities. Our sisters across the African continent and some in Asia live through genital mutilation, either as a rite of passage or as punishment by their male counterparts. This is indeed a scourge. More than 200 million women, 200 million women. Let me repeat the number again. More than 200 million women in the world have experienced genital mutilation. And many more have been forced into marriages that they do not want to be a part of, either at an early age or even as adults. This is what women go through in Africa and in Asia. Our children get abused at our own hands by their mothers, by their fathers, by their sisters, their brothers, their uncles, their teachers, and even neighbors. They get abused sexually, they get abused emotionally, psychologically, and physically. In some countries, the abuse is so rife that the countries have outlawed chastisement of children in schools and in homes. Gender-based violence has the potential to end civilization as we know it. It is for this reason that it is imperative that organizations such as the WMS NGO, the AME Church, and other institutions across the globe join hands in the fight against gender-based violence. Human trafficking is a pandemic on its own. It has increased over the years, and very few countries has shed light on human trafficking in their respective countries in the manner in which they should. Which is why I find this conference particularly interesting and important. Now, human trafficking has evolved. Initially, humans, mainly women and children, were trafficked for sexual exploitation and sex slavery. And nowadays, women are trafficked still for sexual exploitation and slavery, but also for forced labor, for being drug mules, for being porters for drugs, and for arms. This is a new phenomenon, and the impact of which has not truly been evaluated, which is why this conference is of such great significance, because it starts the conversation which will lead to the understanding, evaluation, and truly the curbing and eradication of human trafficking. It is imperative that we realize human trafficking has evolved, and the rationale or reasons for human trafficking across the globe varies. This will enable us to develop appropriate preventative interventions in respective countries and origins. In Asia, men, women, and children are trafficked both for forced labor as well as for sexual slavery. In Europe, for similar reasons. However, in different parts of Europe. In Africa, people are mainly trafficked for forced labor. And in war-torn areas, children particularly are trafficked to become mules, to become children soldiers, and to become armed transporters. In America, children are trafficked more for sexual exploitation and slavery, as well as for forced marriages. Very rarely, but still present, is human trafficking for forced labor. Undoubtedly, a new way, innovative, adaptable, and pragmatic needs to be found in order to combat human trafficking across the globe, because the aftermath of human trafficking are devastating, not only in communities, but to the economy at large. Evidently, human trafficking encompasses human rights violations to children and to women specifically. The gender-based violences I alluded to earlier are also present in human trafficking, which is why it is so important that governments galvanize with institutions across the globe in an effort to eradicate this pandemic. In respect of gender-based violence perpetrated by partners, non-partners, as well as child abuse, I advocate for the following. Programs need to be put in place for advocacy and awareness, programs such as today's ones. Beyond that, there needs to be specific programs specifically for survivors, women and children, to deal with their psychological aftermath. Secondly, programs aimed at empowering women to get out of the environment are also necessary. These include empowerment sessions, skills training, skills development, financial assistance, and job placement. After dealing with the survivors and victims of GBV, it is imperative that the perpetrators also have programs directed at healing them psychologically, so that the root causes of this gender-based violence can be detected and appropriate solutions determined and implemented. There needs to be a safe environment for women and children to report the gender-based violence, such as specialized police stations and one-stop hubs for them to be able to receive not only justice through the justice system, but also empowerment and relief and reprieve from the environment from which they come from. Thirdly, there needs to be a community-based intervention, an intervention that teaches the entire community how to unlearn societal norms that make it normal for violence to be prevalent. The behavior needs to be eradicated from the root cause, and a multi-pronged approach is the best solution. Once all stakeholders have been engaged and programs have run for a significant period of time, evaluation is imperative. Are these interventions yielding the desired result? And if not, why not? The time has come for us to be action-driven. We can no longer talk about gender-based violence and not empower the victims to get out of the situation, not teach the perpetrators to unlearn the undesirable behavior, not to educate the communities within which this gender-based violence is perpetrated. It is imperative that all stakeholders are party to the solution. Government also needs to take a stand. It cannot be that human traffickers are not properly dealt with. Conviction rates are low. This needs to change. Equip the police to investigate. Equip the role players to detect and assist. This requires resources, human capital, as well as financial capital. There needs to be political will, because this is not a morality issue alone. It is an economic, societal, and most importantly, a human rights issue that requires each and every one of us to take a stand.
So as we can discern and hear the issues that are being addressed today are not only serious ones, but they definitely require all of us to understand. And so through Advocate Tabili's video, we're able to make a full connection between the physical, sexual, and forced violence and abuse against women and children as the very scourge on society that it is. These atrocities are not only violent, but are a violation of the dignity of every human being. Every single act perpetrated impacts our entire social system. The next two ladies that will be coming forth, they are not only passionate about these subjects, but they are skilled subject matters. They are skilled subject matter experts. Let me say that properly. They are subject matter experts. Namely, Ms. Thelma Noble and Dr. Tabby Malete. They are qualified individuals, formally educated. They are professional speakers and authors, influencers, and are proven to be trustworthy, not only by victims and survivors, but also their families. These women are on the front lines in the trenches, petitioning, advocating, speaking out against the violence that's being perpetrated. They're standing up for awareness. They're educating, speaking out against gender inequalities, injustices, abuse. They are affecting change and championing partnerships. They are assisting with resources, support, the assistance for recovery, and rehabilitation that was spoken through Advocate Tabili's passionate message. They are serving in the shelters with victims, seeking justice for perpetrators in schools, churches, and communities. And they are educating as many people as they can about prevention. They'll be coming forward in 2 different segments, immediately following a video of real life testimonies. I'm gonna ask you that you raise the volumes of your speakers, and please be aware that some of the images are very raw and the truth may be alarming, but the images and the stories are real. But as faith believers, we understand that by shedding light on the very dark truths of our societies, we know that the very help that is needed will be sent. And we believe that we can make the difference in the lives, in the ears, in the hearts, and in the actions of others. So the first speaker that you'll hear is Ms. Thelma Noble, and she'll bring the facts about this issue as it pertains to the reality of the current situation in South Africa. And behind her, she will introduce Dr. Tabby Malete, and you will continue to be educated. The awareness will continue to be brought forth, and how you can act, how you can advocate, and how you can help eradicate the situation prayerfully will be placed in your heart. So let us go forward with the next video. Followed immediately behind will be Dr. Tabby, but before her, it'll be Ms. Thelma Noble.
So I was 13 years when my stepfather used to touch me in a way he shouldn't have. And I was 21 years when 2 guys came into our shack. One was holding a gun, one was holding a knife, and the other one jumped into my bed and he raped me. When he was done, he asked his friend, "Hey Joe, are you sharp?" And he said no, and he also raped me. The other guy said, "I'm not yet done," and he raped me again. I was in a dark world. I was living in my old world. Don't be afraid to start a new chapter, because it is possible.
A moment of one person's pleasure can mean a lifetime of pain for another. Support victims of gender-based violence.
It is on all strata of society, be it civil society, at work, at home, in the church. It's everywhere. It's increasingly becoming more blatant.
It's these little nuances. It's in the song that says during the weddings, be aware of the language that you use, be aware of the way you look at women, which part of the woman you look at. Find your voice, be able to correct it there and then. Call out an inappropriate behavior and tell a person, "You are making me uncomfortable."
Wishing that perpetrators should rot in jail will sadly not solve the issues of gender-based violence. Prevention is always better than cure.
In the business sector, gender-based violence is rife. In our sector, we had a lady that was attacked, mainly because she got a project. You tend to be scared when you get a project because you feel who's looking. In most cases, those people that exert gender-based violence don't see themselves wrong. They feel they have the right. They feel they have the power. They feel no one is gonna do anything to them. We are citizens of this country. We have nowhere else to go. So if they are not going to assist us, to raise their kids, at least assist us to participate in the economy of South Africa.
As a country, we can all contribute towards ending the scourge of gender-based violence. The answer lies within all of us.
Both with the increase as well as the decrease of political violence, there has been an increase of other forms of violence. Among those are gender-based violence. But in our country, I think we talk about continuous traumatic stress because we are constantly exposed to forms of trauma. People live with what we call hypervigilance, always anticipating something to happen. We have high levels of depression. So we're raising children who are prisoners, and we are prisoners ourselves. I don't believe anyone was born violent. Inflicting that pain on someone, it will pain that person as well. No matter what people do to you, do not succumb to that.
It cannot be that our country is known as the rape and femicide capital of the world. What role are you playing in perpetuating the killing of women and children?
Njengomunye umuntu izinto eziningi bezingayenzakali for mina, so bengicwele ngibona kahle kahle ngila emhlabeni ngeke by mistake. Izinto eziningi nje ezibhedayo elifini whereby ngaba involved with crime or drugs. Baba mangikhula bengamazi, but akumelanga ngijustify because there are a lot of kids abakhule njengami but azange baphile, azange badivert into that life engiye ngayiphila mina. As a person engisebenza nabantu abasha, ngibona a similar pattern in their anger ukuthi baya la ebengikhona, baya bagcwalisa ama-application okuyejele or kwemathuneni uthi ukhulu ungathandwa, sithande ke wena, give yourself uthando.
The high crime rate in our country tells a very sad story about our parenting. Let us reflect on what we are doing to our children. Let's stop the cycle of violence.
Gender-based violence is one very thorny subject that the religious sector has not addressed itself much on. No matter what an ideal perfect organization you would like to establish, you would still find the human element. Once a person is broken in their spirit inside, they will go out to break everything around them. It's an embarrassment to be involved in religion and yet secretly or privately perpetrate or encourage GBV. Rise up and be held. Develop a support structure around you. Listen to those who believe every scar can be covered.
No one is born a perpetrator. Life happens. Seek help before you do something that you regret.
Ms. Thelma, please come off of mute.
Okay. Good afternoon and good evening to South Africans. All protocols observed. Today is Human Rights Day in South Africa because on this day, which used to be called Sharpeville Day, the apartheid regime mercilessly killed 69 people and injured 180, turning what was meant to be a peaceful march against apartheid into one of the most violent ones in the history of the country. It was all about human rights by Black people for Black people. So the fight for human rights is an ongoing universal strife. But today, we focus on women and children. And Advocate Tabile has eloquently laid the foundation on issues in South Africa. The statistics speak for themselves. We are one of the leading countries in the lethal abuse of women at the hands of their intimate partners. And GBV is definitely the second pandemic in our country, where as many as 3 women are being killed every day, where the femicide rate is 5 times higher than the global average. Further, research estimates that 1 in 3 SA women experience physical violence in their relationships, with 1 out of 5 experiencing sexual violence or rape. Lest we forget, whilst most victims are women, there are men too who are victims. But today, we focus on women and children. I will leave this slide on for your convenience as I proceed with my presentation. The GBV situation was exacerbated by the advent of COVID-19 and the resultant lockdowns. For suddenly all members of a family were cooped up under one roof for very long hours. The usual workplace escape valve was not there with the work from home novelty. There were no bars for a jowl with the boys for husbands and male members of society. Their uncles started coveting nieces, and cousins coveted cousins, and the neighbors alike started coveting neighbors' children. The list of potential perpetrators grew exponentially in concentrated spaces, and the homes became the crime scenes. Excuse me. It is a fact that the primary motive of violation against women is usually sex exploitation, driven by lust or power play by male counterparts. Sex against a woman's will or rape, whenever vulnerable females are violated, is without protection, exposing the victims to STD and HIV and AIDS or unwanted pregnancy. Young children are also raped, as there is a belief that sleeping with them as virgins is an AIDS cure. Sadly, most raped children and sometimes women are also killed to destroy the evidence and dumped in shallow graves. Grannies are also raped during housebreaking incidents. Very sad. Deterioration of the fiber of human society. Further, in the name of culture, there are genital mutilations that take place where young women, as a rite of passage, go through this process to prepare them for the pleasure of their husbands when the time comes. This is a harmful traditional practice that requires interrogation in the quest for women's rights and gender equality. On the other hand, some boys have to go through circumcision the traditional way, especially amongst the Xhosa tribal, to become a man. Doing it in hospitals is looked down upon, and such boys are dubbed sissies. But alas, every year so many of them die during the initiation process from dehydration and infections, unless they are rescued on time. At these occasions, both boys and girls in their separate forum are taught about life and the opposite sex. In other parts of Africa, men mutilate their partners as punishment. Can you believe that? These harmful and outdated cultural practices also manifest themselves in various forms. For example, the reed dance, an annual event or feast in Swaziland and KwaZulu-Natal, and the only forum where commoners, especially young maidens, come face to face with the king. The idea was noble. Look at these beautiful girls. Because they were being taught to abstain, preserve themselves, and even got physical examination at intervals to ensure that they were indeed virgins. But who checks the boys? There is a belief that if not a virgin, the reed presented to the king would bend or break. The exploitation, however, is that at this occasion, the king can choose a young wife and add to his polygamous scroll. And this is an annual occurrence. The Swazi king, for example, at the last count had 12 wives, and most of them picked up at the reed dance. That is independence of a young woman gone forever, as she cannot continue with her studies, invariably becoming a wife of an elderly man, sometimes as old as her father, giving birth when her womb is not physically ready, and the resultant complications, and joining a big family of senior wives and their children, and some of them her age. These are deep-rooted norms for exploitation of vulnerable females, as maidens from deprived backgrounds look forward to being chosen by the king at the reed dance, in the hope of breaking the poverty cycle and gaining royal status. A few years ago, a well-known politician was close to the Zulu kingdom, also took advantage of this opportunity to choose his number 5 wife, an 18-year-old, for an almost 70-year-old man. Mercifully, that young lady has subsequently left the polygamous establishment and is reinventing herself as a single mother. How many can do that? They become trapped forever. As already stated, those young brides may not be physically ready, and various complications could result at birth, especially for women in rural areas with limited access to health facilities like prenatal care. A renowned reproductive organ disruption and a resultant health challenge is obstetric fistula, where childbirth can destroy the life of a young mother who has given birth, and sometimes the baby does not even survive. Obstetric fistula leaves a small hole created by constant pressure from the fetus during the prolonged labor, rendering her incontinent. She's often isolated and rejected by her husband and the village or community because of the foul smell. As protagonists of human rights, we need to know that this is curable, but very costly. For every one woman who gets cured, 50 go without. This is therefore a quick win for NGOs to make a difference, to support those NGOs who are focusing on assisting those afflicted with fistula by providing and redirecting financial support for the doctors who give free time to perform the much needed surgery. For example, in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, there's a group of women called Women of Wisdom and Wonder, an NGO abbreviated WWW. They are quite advanced in addressing fistula, with Dr. Noah at Hope Benicard Clinic, where a minimum of 100 women per annum are operated for free. However, this service has also suffered a setback of funding during COVID-19, and the list of women waiting for help is getting longer and longer. Back home in South Africa, it is all hush-hush, and the Department of Health needs to be petitioned to build awareness campaigns to eradicate and empower and ensure that the afflicted come out in the open and seek help. Fistula is one of those global projects of the Connectional AMEWMS, who raise funds annually around Mother's Day in May for the continent of Africa to assist in the DRC and Mozambique. Note, International Fistula Day is on the 23rd of May, and I hope I have piqued your interest. Now, even Tabile talks about governments. Petitioning governments is part of advocacy, and the South African government is congratulated for being visible on gender-based violence. The President, Cyril Ramaphosa, has not only taken a stand on zero tolerance of GBV, but has amended laws, and these have been adopted by Parliament. What is key to take away is that before this, the sentences were light, as the courts could talk about a crime of passion, and the perpetrators got off lightly. The police stations were not always victim-friendly, and many women suffered in silence for fear of being ridiculed by the police. The laws have been amended, and the current status is that attacks on women by their partners is viewed in a more serious light, and it is now called assault with intent to do grievous bodily harm, or femicide, even murder, and that attracts a more serious sentence or a harsh one. There are 106 new sexual offense courts, and the criminal record of and for the perpetrator stays for long. Femicide and GBV courts cases have received priority and are reported daily. It is early days to establish whether the deterrent impact has been felt as yet, but it's a great beginning in an attempt to eradicate the second pandemic after COVID-19. Economic bullying in businesses and workplace is another minefield, but that will be a subject for another day. The judicial system has improved. However, there is still work to be done, as victims who escape abusive marriages and relationships need shelter for themselves and their children. Dr. Batabile, or Tabi Mulete, founder of #IamKarabo, will talk to that. She has recently led a team that audited 21 shelters in partnership with the Department of Social Development. So the government is involved. So as I sign off, we can do this together. Eradicate the undesirables and empower and embrace the victims. I thank you. And over to you, Dr. Batabile Mulite.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to present to you part of the solution on how we transform the South African narrative through active citizenry. River Steenkamp, Amanda Twei, Karabo Mokoena, Zolile Kumalo, Siam Lee, Anene Poisons. These are just the few women who made it into the news for losing their lives at the hands of men, including intimate partners. A list that is 6 names too long. A list of a mere fraction of the number of women murdered daily. Sadly, there are thousands more unreported lost lives as South African statistics remain alarming. This is a quotation from Marie Claire. In 2018, the situation has gotten even worse. The scars sometimes cannot be seen. Anger, rage, fear, anxiety. However, in the next slide, we offer a solution. The speakers that have come before me have looked at all the problems. And I'm here to introduce to you an NGO named #I'mKarabo. Karabo is a Sesotho word for answer, because in our NGO, we believe that all of us can contribute towards the elimination of gender-based violence. It is also the name of one of the victims of femicide in South Africa, Karabo Mokoena. We believe that we all carry a piece of the answer to this pandemic, and our logo says it all. Let's carry each other in love, because the answer lies within. In our NGO, we believe that it takes a village to raise a child. It is therefore about active citizenry, fashioned around the concept of the village taking responsibility to raise and protect all the Karabos of this world. The African village concept of volunteerism is also implemented within our model in South Africa. Our NGO has the blessing of the Karabo Mokoena family. They welcome us with warm hands. And in our NGO, we have women and men, teachers, nurses, police, musicians. We have come together. We have partnered with a university to deliver on our mission. Although some of our plans were disrupted by the lockdown of COVID, we have started to gain some momentum again.
#Amkarabo has got 4 pillars. The first pillar for us is research and innovation, so that we can provide thought leadership in the area of gender-based violence, hence our partnership with universities. Our second pillar is on training and support, where we implement training programs that I'll speak to later to capacitate communities. Currently, we have 3 flagship programs. The first one is on disrupting the cycle of violence, which is for survivors of rape. The second one is alternatives to violence, which is for perpetrators, because they are also our children. The third one is restorative justice for both survivors and perpetrators. Those are our 3 flagship programs in terms of training and support. We've got a third pillar, which is advocacy and community mobilization, where we use applied theater to create awareness around gender-based violence. We use drama, poetry, song to create awareness. Our third one is a program which aims at training unemployed arts graduates in business skills. And so we provide them with free material for them to start their businesses as social entrepreneurs. And let me give you now examples of these programs, what we have done. In our research project, which was on women's shelters, these are some of the pictures of the shelters that we visited. There's a lot that still needs to be done in our shelters. When you look, you can see the state of the women's shelters, and there's lots. I mean, if you look at the third picture there of the bathroom, it just shows that in our women's shelters, we don't have accommodation for women who are disabled. And so that's one of the things that we have to assist to ensure that bathrooms are accessible. There's an office that is also used as a games room for children. So there's a lot of work, and we developed our report in terms of the 21 women's shelters. We also have 2 shelters for men. This is just in one province of South Africa. That's the research project. I have already spoken to our flagship programs, where we have developed an informative booklet on gender-based violence entitled Disrupting the Cycle of Abuse. This booklet of about 20, 30 pages is freely available to anybody. We circulate it through social media, and especially in areas where, like in Tembisa, when we had a case of a man who came and shot an assistant nurse outside the hospital, this was made available. So we developed it for the purpose, it's not for sale, for purposes of awareness, but also we run workshops on it for victims of gender-based violence. It is also a booklet that was used during our research on women's shelters. In our next slide, we trained a group of facilitators on alternatives to violence. This is a program for perpetrators. And I think you heard from Advocate Tabile when she said, we also need to focus on the perpetrators and not just on the victims, because they too have psychological scars. This is a workshop that empowered a few people to go out into the community and train people on alternatives to violence. We also go into schools and make presentations. We talk to young people because schools are microcosms of a society. Learners also experience violence, bullying, rape, crime, and other forms of gender-based violence. This is part of the campaign where we're saying, I am Karabo. It means I am part of the answer. We work through churches as well. We use them as a platform for community mobilization. And we will couch the message in an appropriate religious language, leading with faith in the midst of a storm, the storm of gender-based violence. There are several cases of sexual abuse that involve pastors of churches that are before the courts. And also, in our research, we found women in shelters who were running away from abuse in the church. So we have to go into churches. I alluded earlier on that we've partnered with a university and using drama to create awareness. We had a drama, we partnered with the Tshwane University of Technology and the drama on gender-based violence. The message was loud and clear. And after the drama, we had one of our psychologists, Dr. Palisa Mahlangu, whom you saw in the video, who will debrief the message that we have through the drama. We also have student interns. The videos that you saw were shot by student interns. We have a partnership with the university, and they use our platform as part of their portfolio of evidence in terms of their own studies. And so the videos that we took were for the 16 days of activism in South Africa, which is an annual campaign which takes place towards the end of the year, and it focuses on gender-based violence in the country. I wish to leave you with this message. Silence is no longer an option. Silence, the book, When Silence is No Longer an Option, that I wrote, it was after I had done counseling of many women who were molested as young girls and were struggling with relationships, were struggling because they had not healed. And so this book is also freely available on Smashwords. We have heard about gender-based violence, and in our own organization, we are saying, I am Karabo. It means you are the answer. You take agency in terms of that. We all can do something, because now silence is no longer an option. I thank you.
I want to thank everyone and sincerely appreciate your joining us. If you would please, questions that you may have, if you could please place them in the chat, that would be very helpful. We would love to hear from you.
Yes. This conversation only barely touches the depth of the violations that are taking place within our own communities all across the globe. And the conversation definitely continues. I know that there were a few questions in the chat. And before we get into the questions, Sean, I believe you're looking them up. I would like to acknowledge that we have our international president with us, Dr. King. I'm not sure, Dr. King, if you'd like to greet us at this time.
Thank you for the opportunity. And I thank everyone that's present today, because it's been a very informative and we've received a wealth of knowledge on today under the global leadership of our NGO team, Mrs. Sean Ross and Mrs. Alicia Marriott. And we thank the advocates and the powerful presenters for sharing their profound work and their witness in our quest to eradicate gender-based violence. This is our moral calling for such a time as this. The Bible says in Psalms 82:3 that we must defend the oppressed. And these women are indeed oppressed. All of those millions of women that they talked about, whether it was human trafficking, whether it was genital mutilations. But what you need to do is ask yourselves, because the Bible says faith without works is dead being alone. So you need to ask yourselves, am I the answer? Am I part of the solution? Am I Karambo? And so that's what you need to go away from, making sure that you're always part of the solution, because as I put in the chat box, that we're a global ministry that serves a global God. So we must continue to think globally and not just stay within the confines, because the Bible says to go ye therefore. So thank you, Sean. Thank you, Alicia. Thank you, advocates. Thank you, presenters. You all did an excellent job. And you know, it's very late there. They asked me to say a few words and I'm going on and on. But Dr. Thelma and the other presenter, what time is it there? And you know, it's what time? It's about 1 a.m.?
Mm-hmm. 11:15 at night.
11:15. So if they can spend this type of time to come and present on something that's so important, we have to be Karambo. So I ask you to go forth and continue to make good trouble, necessary trouble, to change the ills of this world. Thank you for the opportunity. God bless you all in your quest to be world changers.
Thank you so very much, President King. Also with us on this evening, very late in South Africa, is Tabile, Advocate Tabile Nubini. And if you would like to greet us on this evening, we would love to hear from you as you share a few words with us. I know you did give us permission to share your pre-recorded message from our conference back in October. We definitely do thank you for sharing it. And even though at the time we were specifically focusing on human trafficking, the conversation, human trafficking, as it was pointed out, is evolving. It is changing. The conversation will continue. This October coming up is our conference for the year of 2022. We will continue. We'll have more conversation. We'll continue the dialogue on gender-based violence. As Dr. King has also added in the chat, and Sister Thelma mentioned, Mother's Day is coming up, and our fistula campaign. We have our commissioner, Janice Brown, with us from the 10th Episcopal District. She will definitely still be looking forward to driving the campaign and additional support. Dr. Tabby presented information and opportunities for you to partner with us, for you to bring your resources, for you to bring your heart, for you to affect and effect change. It takes a village to do the work. It takes a village of partnerships to make it all happen. And together, we can certainly do it. We're not putting a lot of information available for you because we don't want anyone to go any different way. Each of our Episcopal districts has district NGO liaisons that are more than capable of filtering this information, making sure that you get the right information so that you can be a part of the advocacy and the work of the WMS NGO. We thank you so much for your support today. We had over 230 odd persons that were present with us. We had just about 200 registrants. We want to thank you for your patience. When we sent out the original registration, it was before daylight savings time. And so when daylight savings time came, we know that everything changed around. And so we thank you for paying attention to your email inbox today and for pressing through to join us. So before we close out, Sean, were you able to pull up a couple of those questions that can be posed to our presenters so that we can at least continue the dialogue that might be pressing in any of our guests' minds and hearts on this day?
Well, Alicia, no, I have gone through this several times, and no, not at this time, although I did make our email available to persons if they had questions that may come up later. So they can feel free to contact us via email.
All right, thank you. We see that in the chat, we have, and in the gallery, we have other partnerships. We have NCNW that's present with us. We just are very, very passionate about the work of NGOs, and we are grateful for everyone that took out some time to be with us. Please visit our website. You can go to the WMSAMEC.org site, and underneath the banner, you can definitely see the NGO, a link directly to NGO, and any information that we have will be available through that link. You can contact us, put your information into that section of our site, and we will make sure that you have access to this information at a later date. The video, the recording will definitely be available as well. And Sean, I'm going to turn it back to you so that we can have final and closing remarks. And if there's anything that I forgot, please definitely fill in the gaps. Thank you all.
Sean, before you come, I just want to see a show of hands of the women or men or the associates on this line that are willing to be Karambo. Please raise your hand. If this has touched you in any way and you're willing to say to God and to the Women's Missionary Society that you're willing to be part of the solution, part of the answer, I just want to see a show of hands of the 233 people that are present on this call.
Please
God bless you.
Show hands, yes.
God bless you. Sean?
I'm just going to close out at this time by sharing this with you. Human rights are not a privilege conferred by government. They are every human being's entitlement by virtue of his humanity. And this comes from Mother Teresa, saint and missionary. And so we send a blessing out to each and every one of you. And thank you once again for being a part of our event. Once again, please stay in touch, and good night.
We want to thank also Dr. Tabby and Sister Thelma for your wealth of information, for your preparation, and for your information, for your passion. And we thank God for the work that you're doing. And we pray that God will continue to bless you and bless all of us. In Jesus' name.
Amen.
To God be the glory. Good night or good day or whatever you are. God bless you.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good evening.
We're a global ministry.
Good night in South Africa. Our sisters enough, I'll tell you.
It's 11 in the night in Johannesburg.
Unbelievable. Wow. A wealth of information. Wow. Will we be able to get that video that we might be able to share if our Episcopal president or our Episcopal supervisor would like for us to deal with it a little more? Because you know about Florida being the third highest, and you know today they just arrested 3 of our African-American people for trafficking the young kids. They got them wide open. They just arrested them on ABC. So
Dr. Kat, this is Sean Ross. Feel free to email me and we can talk about getting that information to you.
Yes. Well, all righty. Thank you so very much. Good job. Great job, team.
Thank you.
National president, you had everybody.
Praise the Lord.
Yeah. Hello, Sean. This is Joan. Fantastic.
Hi, Joan. How you doing?
Good. Fantastic presentation.
Thank you.
Good.
Thank you. I
Loved
appreciate
it.
that.
Loved it.
Great job, Sister Sean and Sister Alicia. Oh my
All right,
gosh.
Miss Franchetta. Thank you.
Very well done.
All in New York.
I'm getting
Excellent.
Texas.
Yeah.
I'm getting Texas from the 1st district. They love.
Oh.
Yes, the 1st district is on.
1st district is on.
Yeah, great job.
District, thank you.
Thank you, Miss Bernadette.
Yeah,
Again, thank you, speakers. We appreciate you, speakers. Y'all did excellent.
Pam Pryor, they're on. Everybody's on. This is wonderful.
Good job, Sean and Alicia. Excellent work.
Thank you all so
Thank you.
much. Excellent, excellent as always. And hello, Dr. King.
Hi, how you doing, Diane?
Oh, Dr. King is
wonderful. I
How
am
you all doing?
wonderful. Everybody,
Thank you.
hello, everyone.
Thank
Great
you.
job, great job.
And those that are in the United States, make sure you look at your email that I just sent this afternoon in support of the Supreme Court nominee, Judge Brown Jackson. Please tell all your friends. We have got
Most
to
certainly.
Okay, I just
Yes,
sent it a
ma'am.
few minutes ago. God bless you all. We're just daring to make a difference.
Yes.
Thank
You have made a difference. You've allowed this to go. You've done it, Dr. King. You've allowed NGA to expand like this. You know what we started with, so you've just taken it to another level.
It's not about me.
Yes.
It's about the people that I have in place. They make me look good.
Well,
So I thank the NGO team.
That's our
It is the leadership behind it.
Thank you.
You're still the head,
you.
so we appreciate you, Dr.
Hey,
King.
Lloyd. Thank you.
Hi, all.
You know what, Sean? I was worried about people being on the call long and then they don't want to get off, right?
We don't. Dennis Brown doesn't want to get
Love
off.
y'all. Love you all.
Have a good day, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Good, everyone.
Have a nice evening, day, morning.
Good seeing you.
All
Time.
right.
Marriott.
Hey, Lorraine.
Hi.
Bye. Love you guys. Bye-bye.
It's time for our sisters to go to bed. It's 11 o'clock, you all. Let them go to bed.
All right. Good night. Good morning. Good day.
Yes, let them go to bed. Okay. Good night.
Okay.
Good night, our sisters.
Good night and thank you.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night, Advocate Tabile. Thank you for your.
We AMEs love to get together.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Good night.
Thank you, Advocate. Thank you, Thelma. Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Bye.
Now
We
we're
love
getting
you
off.
guys.
Bye.
Thank you. More.
I'm trying to leave, but it won't let me leave.
Okay. Good night.
Everybody can leave, then Dr. King can really talk to us.
No. I'm proud of you all. I'm proud of you all. Love you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Right, everyone. Have a good night.
That's it.